struggle with the term entrepreneurial CEO of a public company. I think it's an oxymoron. Betting other people's money is not entrepreneurship, as far as I'm concerned. Entrepreneur is someone who is their own boss and is risking their own money. And there is something about that mixture of independence and drive and risk and downside that produces those results occasionally. Now, the problem with doing it more than once, of course, is that you can be lucky once. And I have to make a confession. I cheated at the beginning. I come from a rich Greek shipping family, and I got money from my father to start my first venture. So, that's cheating, isn't it? So, at the age of 25, I convinced my father to help me start a shipping company. That company wasn't easy branded, that's why you've never heard of it. It was B2B. Oil tankers, floated on the New York Stock Exchange in 2001, sold it in 2005 for a good sum of money. But already in my early years as a businessman, I realized that I had ADD. So within 2-3 years of launching Stella, I wanted to start an airline because I wanted to prove to myself, my father, and the rest of the world that I wasn't just a rich daddy's boy. That's what drove me back then. Something very, very, very simple. And with the last name like Haji Ioannou, born in Greece, Cypriot origin, I came to Luton, which is an airport about half an hour from here, that nobody knew back then, and decided to launch flights to Glasgow for £29. Now, that's not a venture you take to a bank. Not many venture capitalists with a back to back then. 28 Haji Ioannou, unpronounceable last name, in Britain, trying to sell flights for £29. So thank God my father backed me again. The good news is that since then it's become sort of sustainable, in the sense that the first two did sufficiently well that I reinvested some of the capital gains, if you like, into extending the brand. And that's where the serial bit comes in the sense that I didn't want to follow EasyJet into a PLC status and remain the chief executive. I'm not even the chairman. We sort of apply the corporate governance standard that says the chairman, the chief executive, and the major shareholder should be 3 different people. So I didn't want to become an employee basically of the PLC. I wanted to keep the right to keep creating companies. I kept the Easy brand in my own private company, the Easy Group, and I launched another 16 basically brand extensions since then. Some are doing better than others. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that everything is rosy. In any event, I think we all know that entrepreneurship entails risk. And if you're not willing to lose money occasionally, you're not taking enough risk. It's as simple as that. That's my justification anyway for getting it wrong sometimes. But I think it's important to remember that if you've had one, or if you've been extremely lucky and you have 2 good ones, it's very hard to expect to get a third one. So I'm following more of a diversification strategy now, across the board, extending the brand in different sectors, seeing which one works and which one doesn't. One piece of advice, one sort of rule I follow at the moment is don't bet the farm. This continent is very unforgiving on failure. So only take bets you can afford to lose. And the unique thing about, well, it's not unique, but the unusual thing about what I do is I stick to the same brand, which makes it very difficult to exit. I have to live with my mistakes and sort them out, unlike an unbranded VC that spreads money around and if something doesn't work, just walks away and pulls the flag. Now, environment and the joke about brands. Unfortunately, I had a very tragic experience when I was 23, when I was working for my father. So, back in 91, I sort of found myself in the center of an environmental controversy because one of my father's oil tankers had an accident. It was pollution. And that brought it home. Environmental conscience is not something theoretical for me. I've been in the middle of a big problem as early as 91. And I realized, and I worked very hard since then in the shipping company and other companies to sort of make sure that the protection of the environment, caring for the environment, is at the heart of what we do. It's not inconsistent with making profits. It is about thinking how you run your business and running it more efficiently. For example, the oil tankers, in the space of a couple of decades, completely changed the equipment, the fleet, by designing something more environmentally friendly. And they're still making healthy profits. So it is possible to actually go through a transformation of an industry or standard operating procedures of equipment without actually destroying profitability and the whole system. For example, in EasyJet, we suggest that rather than penalizing the poor by putting up the airport tax, what the government should do is phase out old aircraft. There are 700 aircraft in Europe more than 20 years old. And there is no law or any system to phase them out. Airlines like Alitalia and Iberia and Olympic keep flying. So they're destroying the planet, not me. So I think the best way to think about the environment is to think about economy in financial terms. The more expensive what you're doing is, the more likely it is to be using a lot of Earth's resources, including carbon, and to be creating more carbon emissions. Private jet is the least environmental way to fly, whether we like it or not. If this group wants to make a commitment to save the planet, you should sell all your private jets, including the bosses of Google who organize that. So, if you really care about the environment, you should sell the Bentley and get a cheaper, smaller car. You should occasionally, dare I say, use public transport. How many of you here have an Oyster card in their pocket? Come on. All right, more than I thought. Great, good. I hope you use it. But if you're really talking about zero emissions transportation, hop on a bus that's going anywhere. It has an empty seat. Yeah.
Can you come over here for a couple of minutes?
Look, I have to sit down now? Okay.
Come on over here and join me.
Yeah.
I want to pick up on something that you mentioned, because it actually ties into both the entrepreneurship as well as the notion of doing things right for the environment, which seems to be consistent with all of the companies that you've backed and created, which is to sort of think of the consumer in a different way. I've heard you talk about sweating assets from a financial standpoint, but also making it just a better deal for consumers. So how many of your ventures are from sort of a personal frustration that you had and paying for something that you didn't think was right for to pay for, and wanted to start something better than that?
I really think the road to Damascus in my case was not being frustrated myself, because I came from a Greek shipping family, so I wasn't flying economy class when I created EasyJet. The road to Damascus was, well, I think he has a private jet actually. The road to Damascus was realizing that not everybody's like me.
Yeah.
It was exactly the opposite. It wasn't me being frustrated. It was realizing that if you sell something for the many and not the few, you're likely to end up with a bigger business.
Yeah. I can see that. And how do you leverage the internet for what you're doing? How core is the internet in terms of the businesses?
The internet was a tool that replaced the telephone, as far as I'm concerned, in '98. So when I launched the airline in '95, we had a telephone number on the side of the plane, because that was the method of bypassing travel agents. So cutting out the middleman, go straight to the consumer, get them to call. So we had a call center and everything else. Now, I was lucky enough, and that's probably what gave the competitive edge to EasyJet to grow ahead of its competitors. In '98, the internet became commercially viable. So off came the telephone number, on came the website address, and now 98% of bookings come online. And people wouldn't think of booking any other way now. I mean, it's only the last 2% which is last-minute bookings if you are away from your base and everything else.
If you were going to launch a new venture that was going to focus on internet-related stuff, I'm looking for my next business here. What would you be looking at?
Well, I don't think there's a shortage of ideas.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say that amongst the 17 companies you see there are probably a couple of failed smaller versions of the things that made it. In the sense that, at some stage I thought about social networking or MySpace or Easy Music was meant to be this thing that people go on and list their songs and everything else. Didn't have the time, didn't have the guts, didn't have the focus to do it. It's not easymusic.com, it's MySpace.com. houses the community about music. Social networking, I think, is a powerful phenomenon, and there must be other ways of harvesting that concept, perhaps in more focused communities. Is there any other area of the internet as such? I don't know. I still think of the internet as a tool.
Yeah.
I struggle to think of it as an industry in the sense that if renting office space, temporary office space, which is what Easy Office is doing, online, real time, with a credit card, taking payment rather than having to issue invoices, can take off, let's say 20% of the cost of a business like Regis, that is the business with temporary office space. Now, why Regis is not using it, they'll tell you that their customers want personalized service. They want someone to take them around the office and show them around and give them a cup of coffee, and then they decide to rent. But all that costs money. Yeah. So can you do it more efficiently? Yeah, probably. There are many more industries you can do it more efficiently.
And in the sense of teams, a lot of entrepreneurial ventures seem to have sort of pairs seem to have made sense. Larry and Sergey, Nicholas and Jadis, Steve and Chad, Bill and Paul. Where are you on that?
Well, I'm too individualistic, I think.
So it's not your dad.
Well, it was at the beginning. Now he's retired. He's not very well, unfortunately. I tend to hire people, operational people, that are much better than me at running the company. I think that's my character, if you like. The airline was set up from a technical point of view by the guy who became chief executive when he flew, Greg Webster, an engineer, not sort of character. So very different to me in terms of sort of public persona and marketing. But I was doing the marketing, he was running the airline. Someone had to keep it running.
Super. Thanks, Stelios. If you don't mind sitting back down.
Thank you.